in the comment section about this. Chris Dorn went on the Jake Crane and Company podcast, and off the tip of his tongue, rips off saying that, yeah, he had the injury, which wasn't really even a shoulder injury. It was a hernia injury. And I was like, excuse me, wait a minute. What did he just say? I was like, there's no way he just went over that and just kept going. But yeah, and then I talked to Dave about it. Dave said, yeah, we kind of talked about it in the Discord. I obviously missed that conversation to where it was more of a hernia situation that was lingering from high school, which was in play affecting his ability to throw, right? Because he was hesitant on getting that quick twisting motion. And so that was more of the core problem, that he was out, which again, there was still a shoulder injury, but I don't think nearly as severe as what maybe was led on to believe, which obviously caused for the panic and something fishy going on. And honestly, like it was news to us. We wrote about it, we dropped it as soon as I saw it. And a lot of people have been talking about it since then. I wrote about it, and then when you sent me a clip, what's his name? Austin, the Georgia guy, where they're talking about it, and they said the same thing that I wrote about of like, look, this is kind of best case scenario. And that's kind of how I felt. I said, look, hernias aren't fun. And Dave said, like, they're not the fun thing. I was like, yeah, but you're also old, Dave, so it's a little bit different. But they aren't fun, but it's much better, I would say, if I had to choose an injury than the mechanic of the thing that's going to be thrown the football every single day, right? That seems like a lot. That kind of falls into the line of like a Tommy John, right? Like that is your throwing shoulder. You don't want to play with that. Hernia, like, yes, those don't play those either, but those like hamstrings. Those things are kind of just, they come and go because of where they're located, and those things happen. They're much more common, especially in sports. So I was kind of even more relieved that was the major concern or reason for holdback. And again, things seem to be moving right along. That was also what Chris said, but I was more blown away by what the actual reason was.
Yeah, real fishy. Yeah, I mean, a hernia, it can depend on how severe it is, I guess, and how, I guess, how it progresses or whatever. But I would assuming since DJ Lag was a young kid, it probably isn't that big of a deal, especially when you can still play football, if that's the case. Brooks Austin, I'm going to give him a shout out. I know he's Georgia Bulldog enemy territory. He does a really good job on his channel and on his Twitter. He even referred to it, and they were talking about it and saying, look, we would rather have our quarterback have a hernia injury rather than a shoulder injury, just because you can work through a hernia. I mean, it depends. Like, if your hernia is just really bad, that means that disc is just gone. Like, it is, you need surgery. And obviously, it takes surgery to repair a hernia, and you can do therapy, and you can do all sorts of other things to take the pain away, so you can do things and all that. But, as far as the shoulder injury that was initially reported, I'm sure there was some sort of injury there. It probably wasn't as severe as Mark Long said it was, but something was there. And this is football. People get hurt in football. It happens. People have small injuries here or there. And then when you find out about it, somebody makes it a big deal and they blow it up, and then everybody's worried. In this case, and everybody I've talked to, I was on the Mark Moses show and the radio show too. And I said, look, everybody I've talked to around, I mean, we had his quarterback coach on our show. I've talked to people that are close to Derek. I've talked to people, staff, Florida. Nobody said anything. They said he's fine. So, I mean, it doesn't really matter where the injury consists at or whether it is. It just depends on whether it's going to affect him, whether it's throwing motion or anything like that. And it seems from his parents, coaching staff, and all that, he seems to be fine, and it's not affecting that much.
What's interesting is that why not just come out with that? That would be my first question, is why not say that this was? But again, there was, I think, a lingering shoulder issue because of his inability to throw it properly. I think he was, the form was a little off. I'm going to play this Brooks Austin clip here. Could you get their perspective on it too? Because they kind of, I think, talked and asked around too, so they had a little more insight of what the injury played. But then you get to thinking, like, this guy played through a hernia, a hamstring, and a shoulder injury. And I wonder too, if, when you have a hernia, you're kind of a little, lingering when you move. Could he have been a little bit of, slow on a step, which could cause a hamstring because you're not moving as fluently either? Like, there's so many things now that are kind of checking off boxes of like, look, the hernia it was still a concern, but it sounds like he's healthy. Let's hear what Brooke Austin had to say about it.
Boring says in the middle of that interview, he alludes to it not being a shoulder injury, that it was some type of lingering sports hernia. That it was an intestinal or an internal thing that was causing him pain. He started to compensate for it, and that worried them because the compensation created an extra strain on the shoulder. When I heard this, it made me feel a lot better about the Lagway situation than your shoulder's just been bothering you for 6 months?
Yeah, I mean,
So then they kind of just go on like what we just said. But yeah, that's what's massive, because I think we're all like, you've had a shoulder injury since high school. You've been throwing with a shoulder injury for 6 months. And now after a bowl game that you didn't really need to play in, now you want to sit out. Hernia, a little bit different, right? Because again, I think if you're playing through it, you may think about like, why are you playing through it? Like, you get binged up. You're getting torched, right? And so some of those things you're kind of just going through. It's like, it's not, in a weird way, you can play on a torn meniscus. I'm not saying they're the same thing, but in the sense of like, can you play through them? You can. And eventually, after playing through it, you are compensating, and you don't even realize you're compensating anymore, because I hurt my shoulder playing golf, and I know that I was not getting a full follow through because something popped in there when I was swinging my son's club, messing around, and so when I was playing, I knew I wasn't going to full follow through because it would hurt. So I just naturally started kind of just popping my wrist, and I created a bad habit, taking some time off because of it. But I'm old, man. I don't know. It's killing me. But yeah, interesting stuff, man.
Yeah, wait till you turn 40. Yeah, I mean, you go back to Anthony Richardson's tenure. I mean, he needed surgery before that bowl game. He opted out of the bowl game to get the surgery when we played UCF, but he still played on that injury throughout the year. Kind of the same scenario. I mean, just because you have an injury doesn't mean it's going to affect anything that you have. And I mean, he's been throwing the football. I mean, from everybody I've told, and I think somebody in the chat just said Delatorre posted a video of him throwing, I guess, probably the Florida Victorious page or something like that. But I mean, he's been throwing. He's fine. Everybody I've talked to, he's fine. So it's kind of a relieving for, I guess, as a Florida Gator fan to hear that news that say, well, maybe it was just a hernia. Not
Perfect timing.
Perfect timing. And look, they were talking about, well, he didn't compete in spring and all that, but we know how Billy Napier operates, right? He always puts black jerseys on guys that are precautionary when they don't probably really need to be precautionary, but he just does that as a precaution. You go to the spring game, me and you were there wasn't many ones playing in that spring game at all. There was a lot of twos, a lot of threes. There were some ones on the field, but it wasn't a lot of them anyway.
Not very long, anyways.
Yeah, so I think when the initial news came out, Mark Long over exaggerated it. Everybody got up in arms, and then finally, when everybody started doing some digging, he had his quarterback coach on and everything else. That everybody was like, okay, well, this isn't as bad as we thought it was.
Yeah, look, I mean, to me, it was exciting to hear about, and glad we got to talk about it. It was another big stir once again here in the middle of July. That article was a frenzy. They were talking about it on 1010XL as well. So pretty cool there. But yeah, busy day, but a lot of great information and great interview. Look, we're going to talk more about the interview because there's a lot of great nuggets in there. And again, Chris Doering goes to a lot of these practices. Very insightful. We've had him on the show. What I love about Doering, before we get into that, IB Mac $2 says Mertz will be a Gator legend. I agree. I love Mertz. Mertz definitely has established himself as an absolute legend.